Hello everyone and welcome to the first week of Spooktober here on Umbry And Espy's Spooky Hour. My name is Espy and I will be your host for tonight. Sadly, my partner in crime, the hostess with the mostest, Umbry, is not here today due to Hurricane Matthew. I want to wish him and all people affected by the hurricane luck and hope with all my heart that they're prepared and stay safe. With that said, we promise to podcast every week, so the show must go on. Today on the sub-episode of the Umbry And Espy podcast, our topic is odd disappearances. I will be reading some of the most mysterious documented disappearances that I personally find interesting, strange, and even downright terrifying. When I first started this podcast with Umbry, I always wanted to delve into true crime, and I thought this was a good opportunity to do so. Keep in mind that unlike our previous paranormal podcasts involving haunted forests and cryptids, this episode involves real people and real crimes. With that said, let's get into it. Our first disappearance of the night involves a young woman named Tara Calico and the haunting photograph found that's thought to be her. This is read from bizarrepedia.com. On June 15, 1989, a woman in Port St. Joe, Florida, pulled off Route 98 into the parking lot of a junior food store. She found what appeared to be a Polaroid photo laying face down in the asphalt. When she picked up the Polaroid and turned it over, the picture she saw was harrowing. In the photo, a young woman and a younger boy lie on their backs on a rumpled pile of mismatched sheets and pillows. Both look directly at the camera with expressions of tense resignation. Their mouths are covered with duct tape and their posture suggests that their wrists are bound behind them. The space they occupy is cramped and poorly lit. The only source of light seems to come from behind the photographer. The photo could have well been taken in the back of a windowless van with its side door pulled open. The woman who discovered the photo immediately notified local police. Roadblocks were hurriedly set up, but they failed to snare the van or the mustached man who had been in its driver's seat. At the time she disappeared, 19-year-old Tara Calico was a sophomore at the Valencia campus of the University of New Mexico, a 15-minute commute from her family's home in Belen, New Mexico. On the morning of September 20, 1988, Tara set out from home for a bike ride along Highway 47. The plan was to ride south 17 level miles to the railroad crossing and back again. Tara had a tennis date after lunch, so she told her mother to come looking for her if she wasn't back by noon. She set out on her mother's pink Huffy mountain bike. Her own bike had a flat. She was listening to a Boston cassette on her Sony Walkman. The missing Tara Calico being the young woman in the Polaroid photo seemed a long shot at best. The photo was found 1,600 miles away from where Tara was last seen and some 9 months later, but there were a few significant parallels. The young woman in the photo had the right hair color and complexion. A discolored patch on the young woman's right calf corresponded to a scar Tara had received in a car accident. A tattered mass-market paperback lay on the rumpled bed next to the girl. It was My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, one of Tara's favorite authors. The girl's face looked more drawn and narrow from the most recent photos of Tara, but long months had passed and she might have endured them under austere conditions. The identities of both children remain unknown, and it's extremely sad and powerful photo. You can sense the little boy has that look of extreme fear, but the girl in the left corner is more relaxed. Some people suspect the photo is fake. Marilyn Manson had said in his autobiography that when living in Florida in 1989, the same time the Polaroid was found, he used to take Polaroids of fake murder and torture scenes with his girlfriend, and would leave the pictures in public places. To this day, this still remains unsolved. Our next topic has to do with a woman named Amy Lynn Bradley, and this is read from MysteriousUniverse.org. Perhaps one of the most well-known and publicized mysterious Caribbean cruise ship disappearances is that of 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley, who disappeared without a trace aboard the Royal Caribbean International cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas while it was on a trip from Puerto Rico to the island of Curaçao, located in the southern Caribbean seas in the former Netherlands Antilles. Amy was a bright, outgoing young woman who had just finished college and was on a Caribbean cruise vacation with her mother, father, and younger brother. Amy had joined the cruise rather reluctantly, as although she was a trained lifeguard and a strong swimmer, she had always been afraid of the open ocean, but had been ultimately persuaded to go on the trip by her family. Even with these reservations, once aboard, Amy quickly found herself enjoying the cruise, and on March 23, 1998, on the third night of her trip, as the ship was docked in Curaçao, she and her family attended a dinner party on the upper deck, and she stayed with her brother partying after hours, not returning to her cabin until 3:40 a.m. At 5:30 a.m., after having initially fallen asleep on her room's balcony, Amy woke up, changed clothes, and stepped out with her cigarettes and a lighter, obviously planning on returning shortly because she did not put on shoes. Her family would never see her again. When Amy failed to return to the cabin, her understandably worried family urged the ship to page her over the ship's speaker system, but they refused on the grounds that it was too early in the morning to use the loudspeakers. The crew also refused the family's pleas to back the ship away from the dock or to secure the gangways to prevent any potential kidnapper from whisking Amy away. It was not until around 8 a.m. that the page was finally carried out. By that time, most of the passengers had already disembarked for the day. Since Amy had still not returned to her cabin, the captain ordered a thorough search of the ship, scouring all 10 decks and 999 rooms of the massive ship in search of the missing young woman, but there was no sign of her. It was as if she had just vanished into thin air. Even then, the captain of the cruise would not post pictures of Amy or inform the ship's passengers of her disappearance, as he felt the news would upset the other guests. All in all, the cruise line was extremely uncooperative during the entire process and adamantly denied any responsibility for the family's missing daughter. Things got weirder the following day when the FBI informed the family that cruise security had in fact only done a cursory search of the common areas and the restrooms, and not a thorough room-to-room search as had been claimed. The concerned family returned to the ship and was met with who was described as the ship's risk management agent, who turned out to be in actuality the cruise line's attorney representing the company in any legal action taken by Amy's family against them. The FBI stepped in and engaged in several interviews with this attorney, during which the family was not allowed to be present, yet the attorney attended all of the family's meetings with the FBI. This secrecy, lack of cooperation, dishonesty, and even hostility shown by the cruise line was extremely discouraging to Amy's family, yet with the help of the FBI they soldiered on. As the investigation continued, several witnesses came forward and some light was shed upon what had happened to Amy after leaving her room, and possible clues to what had happened to her trickled in. One witness by the name of Crystal Roberts claimed to have seen Amy shortly after she left her cabin with a bass player named Alistair Douglas, and known as Yellow, and who was in the band Blue Orchard, which had been playing at the dinner party the night before, who other witnesses claimed had been flirting with her at the party. Video footage from the party even shows them slow dancing with each other and appearing to hold hands. There are a few things that would transpire during this encounter with Douglas on the morning of Amy's disappearance that seemed highly suspicious. It was claimed that after meeting up with him in the early morning hours, Amy was seen going off with Douglas to another area of the ship, and the bass player returned 10 minutes later alone. Additionally, Amy's brother Brad said that the bass player had come to him the morning of the initial search and said he felt bad about his sister, even though the family and security were the only ones who knew of the disappearance at the time. Nevertheless, authorities could find no evidence to directly link the bass player to the disappearance, and he was not detained or considered a suspect. There are also some other spooky little details that surfaced. It was later claimed by the family that at the party on March 23rd, the night before Amy's disappearance, they had seen a group of individuals who were not passengers come aboard the ship with the dance troupe and proceeded to mill about and observe the party while standing near the ship's railing. The family had felt at the time that it was rather odd that these strangers should be allowed to just freely board the ship and watch a performance along with the paying passenger. It was also claimed that 3 of the ship's waiters had acted somewhat inappropriately towards Amy during the days leading up to the disappearance, calling her by her first name, flirting with her, and inviting her along to go to the shore with them. And Amy herself had at one point mentioned that they'd give her the creeps. Even more bizarrely, when Amy and her mother had gone to look at the pictures that had been taken during the dinner party, which were meant to be posted on a board, all of the photos with Amy in them had been missing. When they asked the person in charge when they would be posted, although the clerk clearly remembered putting the pictures in with the others, he was unable to locate them and instead promised to have them redeveloped the following day. It is unclear just what connection these strange details have to the disappearance, if any, but they certainly give the case a rather creepy and menacing quality. So what happened to Amy Bradley? It was suggested at the time that she may have run away or even committed suicide by jumping over the ship's railing. But this did not make much sense because she was a happy, well-adjusted young woman who by all accounts loved her family dearly. She had also recently just adopted a bulldog which she was planning to go pick up after the cruise, as well as acquired a new job that she was to start upon her return. On top of all this, Amy had taken along 15 rolls of film with her on the trip because she had intended to make a collage for her coffee table back home, and she had also written numerous postcards to friends expressing how much she was looking forward to getting back and telling them all about the cruise. A subsequent detailed FBI investigation into Amy's background, including many interviews with family, friends, coworkers, and even classmates and professors from the college she had attended, further showed that she was not a good candidate for a runaway since she did not meet their quote-unquote runaway profile in any way, and there was absolutely no indication of her having a desire to leave, nor was there any evidence at all that she would have wanted to harm herself or commit suicide. This is my last story for the night. It has to do with a woman named Dorothy Cooper Forrestine, and it is read off strangecode.blogspot.com. Philadelphian Dorothy Cooper Forstein appeared to be a happily married, comfortably well-to-do, a loving mother and well-liked. She was, in short, one of the last people anyone would imagine as a victim of one of the creepiest disappearances in American history. In 1944, Dorothy had been married for 2 years to city magistrate Jules Forstein. The couple had 3 young children, Myrna and Marcy, his offspring from a previous marriage. Jules' first wife Molly died sometime around 1940, and their new baby, Edward. One evening in that year, Miss Forstein dropped her children off at a neighbor's house so she could do some shopping. By the time she returned home, it was nearly dark. As she entered her house, someone suddenly sprang up and attacked her, beating the helpless woman into unconsciousness. Her fall knocked over the telephone, and when the operator heard strange noises coming from the instrument, she alerted the police. Miss Forstein was found with her nose and jaw broken and a shoulder fractured. She was also suffering from a concussion. After she regained consciousness, all she could say was, "Someone jumped out at me." Investigators were baffled by the crime. Burglary could not have been the motive, as nothing in the house had been taken. Her husband, the usual prime suspect in such cases, had a cast iron alibi. She had no known enemies. Jules Forstein could think of no one who could have held enough of a professional grudge against him to attack his wife. The fact remained, however, that someone had enough hatred for this seemingly inoffensive woman to lie in wait and nearly beat her to death. But who? The assault remained a mystery. Miss Forstein recovered physically from her injuries, but her emotional health was never the same again. Quite understandably, Miss Forstein became fearful, paranoid, and constantly on her guard. 5 years went by, and life for the Forstein family gradually returned to normal. On the night of October 18, 1949, Mr. Forstein was away from home for the evening. The eldest child, 19-year-old Myrna, was also absent, visiting friends. Miss Forstein and the younger children spent a routine evening at home. Around 9 p.m., Dorothy phoned a friend to arrange for the two of them to take a shopping trip the next day. She showed no sign she suspected anything was amiss. Mr. Forstein returned home at about 11:30 p.m. He found young Edward and Marcy cowering in an upstairs bedroom. "Mommy's gone," they told him. Very curiously, particularly in light of the previous attack on his wife, Jules Forstein waited 2 days before contacting the police. Officers then made a search all over Philadelphia without finding any sign of the missing woman. Her purse and keys were still at home. As with the early attack, nothing in the house was taken. The front door had still been locked. All we know about her disappearance is the story told by 9-year-old Marcy Forstein. She told police that on the night her mother vanished, she was awakened by the sound of someone entering the house. When she went out in the hall to investigate, she saw a strange man coming upstairs. Her pajama-clad mother was lying face down on the floor of her bedroom, resting. She saw this man pick up the dazed or unconscious Dorothy up and carry her downstairs. Marcy asked him, "What are you doing?" He replied, "Go back to sleep, little one. Your mother is all right." He patted Marcy on the head and walked out with Miss Forstein's limp body still slung over his shoulder. About 15 minutes later, she said, her father returned home. Police were reluctant to credit the girl's story. There were no strange fingerprints found anywhere in the house, no sign of forced entry into the securely locked residence, and it seemed impossible that anyone could carry a woman's body down a busy street unnoticed. And how could Miss Forstein have been rendered dazed or unconscious before the stranger entered the house? However, Marcy consistently stuck to this account, and psychiatrists who examined her were convinced she was telling the truth. As bizarre and incomprehensible as the girl's story may have been, it is all we have to go on trying to solve the mystery of Dorothy Forstein's disappearance. No trace of her has ever been found. Well, spooked listeners, I guess that's it for tonight. I apologize for such a short episode, but I didn't have much time to prepare, and honestly, I'm sure this isn't the last time you'll hear from mysterious disappearances on this show. I would like to go back with Umbry and do this topic, but with more of a paranormal twist to it. I would like to apologize though, we don't usually read directly from internet articles and websites, but this time I guess I had to. Just know that I will not be monetizing this video in any way, so even if we had enough viewers to make money, we wouldn't be making any money. So with that said, my name is Espy. I was your host for tonight of Umbry And Espy Spooky Hour. Prepare for another podcast episode next week on this month of Spooktober. And remember, listeners, stay spooked.